In this video, let's take a look at the modulation matrix of wavetable and how you can use its modulation sources or MIDI modulation sources to affect sound. Modulation in wavetable allows you to control parameters using modulation sources. There are 5 modulation sources within the wavetable device. These consist of 3 envelopes and 2 LFOs. You also have the possibility of using MIDI modulation sources from the MIDI modulation matrix tab. Most MIDI modulation sources can be controlled using a MIDI controller. You can also automate MIDI controls within the envelope section of MIDI clips. You can use a modulation source and apply it to a destination or target in the modulation matrix. If you toggle Wavetable's expanded view, the modulation matrix tab and the MIDI modulation matrix tab are combined. The modulation targets are on the left-hand side. When you load a default instance of Wavetable, the oscillator 1 position, the amplitude, and the pitch are already available as targets within the modulation matrix. To add a wavetable parameter as a target to the modulation matrix, simply click the parameter with your mouse cursor that you wish to add, and this will be automatically added to the modulation matrix. I'd like to use the modulation source LFO1 to modulate the filter in Wavetable. To apply modulation to a parameter, simply click in the window that corresponds to the modulation source and the target that you wish to modulate, and apply the modulation by clicking and dragging. You can also use your computer keyboard to type in the value. I'll use the modulation source LFO2 to modulate the wavetable position of oscillator 1. You can also add some parameters of the modulation sources themselves to the modulation matrix. Using MIDI modulation sources in the modulation matrix works in the same way. I'll use the velocity of the MIDI clip as a MIDI modulation source to modulate the wavetable position of oscillator 1. The global amount controls the overall amount of modulation for all sources within the modulation matrix. A lower value decreases the effect of all modulators, whereas a higher value increases the effect of all modulators. The global time scales the time of all modulators. Negative values make envelopes and LFOs faster, while a higher or positive value makes them slower. Global modulation time, as well as global modulation amount, can also be added to the modulation matrix.